And Jack, I have to ask, because as we close out the documentary, they were, of course, speaking on the case itself, and there was one juror that he said something very interesting as far as the
You
way
talking
it's
about that
looking.
Indian man?
The Indian man, yes, because he said he never heard of Diddy. He didn't know Diddy. He didn't know no music. So I said, okay, this is a person who doesn't know nothing about nothing compared to like the black girl who said, "Oh, I grew up, watching Diddy and stuff." He
Yeah,
said he looked at like the situation with Cassie and Diddy was like two hands clapping.
yeah,
If they don't come together, there's no noise. So they have to
yeah.
they have to connect.
Yeah, he also said that if you don't like what's happening to you, you just leave and you don't keep going back. Like you can't complain about being, essayed and hurt and harmed, but you keep going back to live the life of luxury. When he said that, see, that was the stupidest shit that Dot Indian could have ever said. And it's very funny that you want to bring up the jurors because my notes that I took, like I'm not understanding how they're not being investigated and how people aren't looking at their financials all the way around. I was able to spot so many different tells between the both of them, especially that goofy black bitch. Juror 106, she's a fucking idiot. Now, I thought that was kind of brilliant though, that they put them in there because if you're really paying attention and listening to what they're saying, they're sitting there telling themselves, they telling on themselves like crazy about how compromised they are and how biased they were towards Diddy. Like very biased. Number one, who selected that jury? Like I'm still trying to figure out how the federal prosecution failed selecting that jury because everything that was on that jury was anti prosecution and pro defense. No disrespect, but I've known a lot of Indian men throughout my life. I've done business with a couple throughout my life. And I'm not trying to be biased, but there are just certain things that are just real, like very, very, very real, very misogynistic. They are very misogynistic. They don't really treat women fairly. Uh, they do dowries for their daughters. Like it's part of the culture. When I think back to that movie that Denzel Washington did many, many, many years ago called Mississippi Masala, and the way they depicted his relationship with a Dot Indian girl who he fell in love with named Mina, and they had a very interesting, it was so interesting the way the men in her family looked down upon him, looked down upon her for dealing with him. um they were very dismissive of the women involved. It was just a very misogynistic culture that was being displayed in that movie. And I'm sitting there listening to this guy, and I'm like, there's no way with his views and just the typical background of these kinds of men, he should have ever been on that jury. Because in order for him to have the attitude that he had, he would have to completely discredit the fact that Cassie did try to get away from Diddy on multiple occasions, and she was hunted down, she was followed. Like when she dropped her lawsuit, one of the incidents that she recounted was that after she left the final time before she got married and she was, starting her motherhood journey, the Diddy came to her, forced his way into her residence, and SK'd her in her home. Do you guys remember that? That was all
Exactly.
details that were added in the case that he settled. The case was filed and he settled it and paid in 24 hours. Like you would have to totally discredit that or discredit the fact that, Capricorn Clark, the whole Kid Cudi situation. when she said that Diddy brought Cassie to her to stay with her while he was out of town. She was a young adult, but she was an adult. Why does she need to be babysat by anyone? Why would she need someone around watching everything that she did? Why? And then just the like the whole nature of it all. It's almost as if he completely discredited everything that was said about this man, which means that he couldn't have given an unbiased opinion if his actual opinion is to discredit victim statements and outcry. Am I wrong? Or am I true?
No, no, speak about it.
But when he sat there, though, and said, when they asked about him and the juror 106, that goofy black bitch, they sitting there, and when they asked about him making eye contact or about him looking at the jury, they both lied. In my opinion, they both lied. The way when it asked, well, did he ever make eye contact? No, 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 no. Well, see, they gave instructions and said you can't look at him. But the girl sat there and was talking about how he would look over at the jury because he forgot where he was, and how, sometimes he would nod and do this. But you said that he never looked over at the jury. You said that you never made eye contact with him. And then she starts talking about, yeah, because I just think that he nods back and forth because he always used to do that. If you were never a fan of him, if you were only a fan of the artist, and you were never a fan of him, and you were never paying, like, and then the way they were able to edit in him nodding back and forth during making the band and all of that, like, it's just kind of wild to me that nobody is seeing exactly how compromised these jurors are. And then the way she was dancing around the whole avoiding social media during the trial. But meanwhile, I don't believe any of their phones were confiscated and they hadn't been secured. They weren't sequestered. They were able to just come freely back and forth to court, which means anybody could have walked up to them. Anybody could have spoken to them. Anybody could have showed up, followed them home. Like I said, there was a bunch of YouTubers hanging around that courthouse. They were there looking at the jurors. They were there. I I I put it past none of them to have been able to follow any of these people home, get their address, and then come back because they were all speaking to the legal team. Like that was the one thing that Tisa Tells was talking about, how she was watching the propaganda machine working and how they were sitting there talking to the bloggers, talking his legal team. And one of the main ones was that woman that I saw outside the courthouse that I spoke to, the one that had hugged me. And I let her know that I was praying for everybody the day that I was there in court. She's a damage control specialist. That's what she does. She was a PR person there to handle, like, all of this was a setup.
Real life. If that shit ain't real life,